Hey there, everybody. Robert Taylor with Wonderscape Creations doing another spell video. This one is a bit of a special one. We have Shane Sweatpants to thank for this. He'd gotten help from someone whose name I can't pronounce, but I did spell it out in the ACF Discord, thanking him as well. Um, but yeah, got a cool new spell. He wanted me to help make it better and even add some really cool features to it. So I went ahead and did that and got his permission to share it with the community. So by the end of this, we're going to have a sustainability that can have a path, or it can just be that tornado that you saw that does damage when you are channeling. And as you can see, my mana is coming back. It's actually a sustained thing. As you can see, it's draining the mana. And as you can also see, I can't get any further than that. So I added some functionality to make sure we couldn't go too far into the distance. So we're going to go ahead and get started and take care of the whole spell. It will take a few videos, and it is definitely not one that I had intended, but uh, figured helping him out got me a little help in understanding the system a little bit more, and figured it would help you guys out even more. By the end of it, you'll have the same flexibility as you did from the first one. So this does go beyond what I had said for the spells that I do plan on making. But I told him I didn't feel right sharing it with the little bit of work that I did, because all I did was a few optimization things and take care of some redundancies. So I added the trail, he had the tornado. Technically, I only did one spell. So let's go ahead and get this started. The first thing we need to do, let me move one of my content browsers over here for this video. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a new enum. Oh, that's right. Before that, I don't want to forget. This spell uses a VFX that is not in the sample. I've gone and done everything that I can to make sure that this is good to go. As you saw, it was good to go. Now, the ground effects, that is in the sample. It's the tornado only. So I've created this right here, this folder. When we open it up, you'll see that there's Wonderscape creations in here. Obviously, make sure you unzip it. And once it is unzipped, you move this folder, not the folder within the folder, just this one. You'll know it's the right one if you go and open it and you have 3 folders. That's when you know that that's the one you need to move. And you move that into the full sample. Let me get the exact right location. Yes. So you would then go to, let me just right click here, show an explorer here. You would go into your project, into content, into full sample, into assets, and make sure it's in here. You want to make sure it's in the assets folder. If you don't do that, you're going to have a bunch of broken references, and you're going to have to either sort that out or close the project, delete the folder, and try again. If you do it this way, you won't have any referencing problems. Everything will be there and everything will work as it should. You'll know that it is working as it should if, let me go ahead and just open this spell real quick so that I can easily get to it here. If you come here to the materials, and if you see the materials like this, you know you've done it right. To be safe, open up the material and make sure that this stays looking as it is right here. That's how you'll know you did it correctly. Now, without further ado, just make sure you download it. The link will be in the description for you guys. And then we can continue on. So, as I was saying earlier, the first thing we need to do is create a new enum. And this one is for the sustained types. I did play with the idea of having both AOE, having all three of these in with the AOE type as well, but decided against it. This allows more flexibility, removes some confusion for people if they decide to create their own, all the whole 9 yards. So go ahead, create new 3 new enumerators: sustained, trail, and then sustained and trail. That's all we need. Go ahead and save it, and you can close it out. Yep. For those who may not know where it's at, again, blueprints, enumeration, or you can just search here at the top for enumeration. The next thing we need to do is we need to create an actor. The first actor we're going to create is the trail. This is going to take up the rest of the episode, and in the next one we should be able to get the AOE one and possibly the action. So let me go ahead and just make this bigger here. This runs the whole trail. The whole trail is run by what's right here. Because it's mostly controlled by who creates it, which is the actor we do in the next episode. So the first thing we need to do is up here in the components, we need to add a spline component. I named mine Trail Spline. And then add the ACM Collision Manager. Once you have them created, I believe technically it's all you need to do, but if you want to, you can come up here in the ACM Collision Manager, go to the traces, area damage trace info, and change the damage type to area. There's nothing else in here. That is all we really have. The next thing we want to do is we need to set up all these variables. So create a custom event called initialize trail. And for the inputs, you're going to have the trail width, which is a float, lifespan of component, which is a float, damage frequency, which is a float, damage types, which is an array of damage types, Niagara effects, which is a Niagara system, an FX, which is a particle system, chance to apply status effects, which is a Boolean, and status effects, which is the ACF based status effect with a float for the value for the map. Now, once you've gotten this created, obviously drag out of each of them and promote to variable for all of them. Once you've done that, select all of those variables that have been set, right-click, collapse to function, and name the function set variables. And you should have something that looks like this. Now, once we're done there, we need to set up the collision channels. Go ahead and actually move this in there as well. We'll hit Control X, open this up, right there. And you need to just go ahead and create this function called Setup Collision Channels. And of course, we will go ahead and get the owner. Make sure that the owner is valid first. If it's not, no owner. Have that there. That way you can figure it out if this isn't working later. And then we will drag out of get owner. Well, no, we won't drag out of get owner. Drag in the ACM Collision Manager and drag out of that for set actor owner. And then you'll just put the get owner into new owner. The next thing we want to do is to cast to the ACF character. To get the owner character, I actually don't think that's needed. Let me find out for a second. Come over here. Find references by name. Okay, it is used. That's why we have it. Glad I did it then. We need the character owner, so make sure we have that. The next thing we want to do is get the ACF Team Manager subsystem. So just come in here, right click on the graph and search for ACFT Manager Subsystem. And then pull out Get Hostile Collision Channels, to which we will then pull out of the ACF character, Get Combat Team. This will get the team that the character is in. And then we will get the ACM Collision Manager again, add collision channels, drag the return value into the end trace channels. Last but not least, the ACM Collision Manager, we need to pull out of there to set actor owner. Go ahead and set that. Oh, wait a second. Am I already doing that? I am. I prefer it to be the instigator anyways, so I will go ahead and close that right there. I prefer the instigator myself. There we go. Now everything is set and ready to go, and a little cleaned up. Now, then for the fun stuff. We have this all set up, but as you can see here, we have a lot of functions, more than just the few that we made here. So the next thing we want to do is the first thing is, where is it? Which one? Update trail mesh. It was right at the top. So create a function called update trail mesh. As you can see, now that I've opened it, there is a lot here. So we need to make sure that this is done exactly correctly, or you will run into issues. When you're doing a trail effect like this, there's a lot that needs to be considered. And the way that I have it set up makes it to where it works as it should, not just works for now. Did a lot of bug testing over a couple of days. So the very first thing we want to do is to get our Niagara effects and our effects variables, pull out of them for is valid, pull out of either or of them and search for the or boolean and connect them up and plug that in. Because if neither of them are valid, we don't want to do any of this. There's no reason to do any of it. So no trail effects will be stated right there. If it's true, excuse me, we need to pull out of the trail spline, which is up here in the components, get number of spline points, get a -1 to get the local needed segments. And then we will get the spline mesh segments, get the length of it, and set that as a local current segment. So if you go up here and promote to local variable, that means that it won't be anywhere else, and you'll see this V on there. If you don't see the V in the period, you didn't make it local. Make it local. You don't need it anywhere else outside of this function. The next thing we want to do is check if the local current segment is greater than the local needed segment. If it's false, return. If it's true, we get the local current segment. We plug it into the first and last index. The reason we're doing this is this keeps us from having to redo the whole thing, this whole process over and over again. We don't have to worry about anything. So we go ahead and do this for loop. This for loop. That way we only do this once. I was stuck here forever because I had the local needed in, I believe, as the last index, so I was doing it twice every other time. So I was doing, every other time I was going 2, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0. Created so many visual effects bugs, it wasn't even funny. But yeah, so we are doing it this way. At that point, we will then search for the component or the function add spline mesh component. It's its own function, manual attachment. We don't want it to attach it itself. We are going to do that down here. We will then pull out of there to get the local spline mesh component reference. Set the mobility to movable. If you don't, it's going to throw a fit because we are doing this at runtime. And then we'll get the new local spline mesh component reference that we made. We're going to set the visibility to invisible. We don't want to see it. We just need it for overlapping events. Next, again, get this local mesh component variable, set static mesh. And out of new mesh, drag out and create a new variable. I called mine trail mesh. And I put in the cube. This is important. It is very important you get the correct cube. The reason I say this, I had the wrong cube. Well, I had this cube, but I had the wrong sphere. The sphere was bigger than the cube, which means the size for the collision of my the visual decal was bigger than what I was getting here for the cube. We don't want that. So we need to make sure you get the cube that is in engine basic shapes cube. The next thing we want to do is to again get that local mesh comp reference, set forward axis to X, update mesh. Then again, get the same reference, set start scale. We get the trail width, multiply it by 0.01 so that it is 100th the size of that it was. Otherwise, it's going to make it much, much larger because it will send in 100. If you have this right here in the decal, if you have the area for the Z set to 200, then it's going to send this to 200, which is going to make it 200 meters. We just want 200 centimeters. So don't skip this part. And then I have the Y set to 1.5. It's important to note that the Y in this instance is the Z. It's confusing, I know, but this is the Z. I promise. So if you want this to be the same height as what's being spawned, then go ahead and plug that in as well. I do not. And then you're going to do the same thing for the set end scale. Now, once you're done with that, we now need to local spline mesh component reference. Again, we're going to get the trail spline because we want to, out of the local spline mesh component reference, I believe it's that one, attach components to component. The parent needs to be the trail spline, and the component needs to be the target. And you want to make sure keep relative is set and weld. Now, this next bit that we need to do is important for the collision to make sure that we get everything set up correctly. Now, I know you may be wondering, well, we have the ACM Collision Manager, why not use that? And you would be correct. You could do it this way if you wanted to. There's a problem, though. Every single one of these segments that are spawned, so where every single one of these every single one of these effects pops up is a segment. If one of them has a collision over both of them, then they take double damage. If they're over 3 of them, then triple damage, because the ACM Collision Manager doesn't account for this specific instance. Pasca is aware of it, but it may not be changed, which is fine, because we have something that works, and it works well. So we want to make sure for each of these, obviously, we get the local spline mesh component. And when you get collision enabled, query only, we don't need the physics. We make sure we have the collision object typed upon, Set collision response channels for pawn and character mesh to overlap. And then local spline mesh component reference again, generate overlap events needs to be true. And then we need to create two functions. Local spline mesh, we need to bind events to on component begin overlap and bind event to on component end overlap. When you pull out of the event, you're going to see create event. And that's what you'll want to click, and that'll bring this up. To which you'll come over here and create matching function is what I did. You can do an event if you want. But I chose function. As you can see, I have mine right here, overlap. The same thing over here. Then I have end overlap. So go ahead and get those created. We will do those after we're done with this function. We don't want it. It gets complicated. Now, once we're done with that, we will get the spline mesh segments, which we don't have a variable for of yet, now that I think about it. So we're going to go ahead and create this variable. It is an array of spline mesh components. So go ahead and drag that in once you have it made. Search for add to add that in. Now, once this is complete, we go into this next spot. And what we're going to do is spline mesh segments, which we have here, and then we're going to get the local current segments. So we get the one that we need to make. Because if it's 0, then we'll make 0. If we have 1, then it's going to make number 1. If we make 2, then it's going to make number 2. This was in its own as well, and it was recreating the whole setup for the static spline. I mean the mesh spline, which was fine. It worked, but then we ran into the problem when we created the effects, because it was going through all of this over and over and over again, and I was making, for 8 segments, I was making like 100 and something visual effects, so I wasn't destroying them appropriately because I wasn't creating them appropriately. So yeah, we went with this way. So once we get it, we want to set start and end. We're going to get the trail spline. We're going to get the local current segments. We'll drag out of there for the endpoint. We need to get the get location at spline point and then get tangent at spline point. Then we need to get location at spline point again and get tangent at spline point again. As you can see, this one right here at the bottom, local current segments, is +1. So we're going to go ahead and add 1 to that. Now to think about it, that might be incorrect. Let's take a look. Let's find out. That might be. I'm going to find out real quick. Logically, it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. So let me find out. Okay. Now we know that it does not make sense. Logically, for me, it made sense. There we go. And then we plug them in correctly. This top one goes into the top one. The second one goes into the second one. That's why I put them in this order. Make sure they're in there correctly. And because we'll need it in a little bit, drag out of the top spline location at spline point. We need to get alert vector, make that an A, plug that one into A. B goes into the bottom one, the bottom location at spline point, and we put it at 0.5. The reason we're doing this is so that when we spawn the visual effects, it spawns exactly in the middle of both points instead of spawning on one of the points. This way it visually looks correct to where you can be damaged. The next thing we want to do is I did a validated get for the Niagara effects. If it is valid, we went ahead and spawned system attached, and we attached it to the exact same thing that's right here. Then the location we plugged in right there. Make sure all the variables are the same. And once we created it, we need to create this array. It is not an Niagara effects one. So do not go ahead and create a Niagara effects one. It is an effects system component. Now, the reason I did that is the effects system component is the parent for both Niagara and Cascade. So this makes it to where we can store, we could just have one variable. We didn't need to have two. And make sure you have that added. If it's not, then we do a validated get for the effects and do the exact same thing. And now we'll go ahead and continue. Pause if you still need it. Remember, it goes and plugs in right there. The next thing we want to do is set up the functionality for the destroy. Now, obviously, we'll make the component in a little bit, but we don't need the component to set up the timer. So the first thing we want to do is to make a timer handle. It's literally it's just called timer handle, and I named it destroy timer handle. We want to see if it's valid. If it's not valid, we're going to go ahead and create it. So that's what we're doing here. Set timer by function name. Make sure you set the destroy component in the function name. And lifespan of component, we have it defaulted at 2. The spell you saw has it at 4. Excuse me. And we want to make sure it's looping. And then we want to set the destroy timer handle right here. And that is the whole thing for this function. Now then, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create these two functions before we create the destroy function. So go to your overlap collision. And here's what we're going to do. We'll get the other actor, cast the ACF character. So obviously, if it casts to it, we want to use it. If we don't, it doesn't matter. Stupid easy to do it this way. Obviously, if you're going to have things that aren't aren't children of ACF character, then you might want to do a interface, but you guys should know how to do that. We'll then pull out of the ACF team component. Pull out of that for is hostile towards. Then we'll get the owning character, which is the one who casts the spell. Get their team component. Get team. Plug that in. If it's true, then we want to create an array. Well, we need to create an array that is of ACF character, and I named it ACF character array. We want to add unique. Add unique is important. We don't want to have the same one added twice. Excuse me. And then we will go ahead and check if this timer handle is correct. It is active. If not, we're going to go ahead and create it. Wait a second. Oh, nope. Different timer. I wasn't reading it correctly. This is for the pulse damage timer handle. We definitely want this created. So make a second handle. Is valid. Branch. Set timer by function name. Go ahead and pause it if you need it. My damage frequency is at 0.5, so every half a second. Once we're done with that, we are going to do the end overlap collision. This one is a bit complicated. Kidding. So we'll get to the other actor, cast to it obviously, spline mesh components. We're going to see if this actor still overlaps with any of the spline mesh components, because this collision end and exit, or when on and end overlap, happens when they move from one segment to the other as well. There's no way around that. If they are overlapping, it's true. We're just going to end the function right there. We're just going to exit it. Don't have to worry about anything. If we get through the whole thing and they're not anywhere in any of them, we want to remove them. This way they're not taking damage every half a second. All right. The next thing we want to do, let's go ahead and close this, is we're going to create the destroy component. So let's go ahead and create a function called destroy component. Make sure it's named exactly as destroy component is in the timer. We're going to open it up. The first thing we're going to do is check to see if it's empty. If it's empty, destroy the timer. We don't need it anymore. If it's not, then we need to start destroying components. And the beautiful thing of how we have this set up, so I'm sure you noticed how the components that were getting destroyed, it was going from the oldest one to the newest one. And that's what we're doing here. That's why we're doing it this way. If you're wanting the whole thing to just be destroyed at the same time, you'll need to change a few things to make the functionality work the way that you want it to. But we are doing it per component so that it creeps the same way that it creeped when you created it. So we're going to get the first in the index for the FX system components, destroy that actor, and then remove it. That way that there's a new 0. And then we're going to get the spline segments, destroy it, and remove it as well so that there's a new 0. We will then remove spline point 0 because we don't need it. No longer needed. And now there's a new spline point 0. Simple. Done. Now then, the next one we need to create is we need to come back in here to the overlap collision where we did the perform pulse damage. You need to make sure you have this named correctly for the function. So I would recommend copying it, creating a new function called perform pulse damage. Here's where things get complicated. And I'll explain why it gets complicated, why this part has to be so complicated. It's right here, obviously, if you need it. But essentially, when you are creating the trail effects, it's when it creates the mesh spline component segment, it does not generate an overlap event because you're creating it dynamically, which means you need to find a different way to get the actors that are sitting in the trail when it goes over them. Now, obviously, what we've set up is for when they run through it. That's already set and good and ready. It's the ones that you see them, so you're going to go ahead and create a trail and have it go towards them, which would then activate combat. So for that, we have to do something within the parent that creates this trail for us. We'll obviously create the function today because it's here in this actor, but we have to make sure that everything is done correctly here. If we don't, there is an instance where if the parent goes over the actor, it will get the reference for it, but before before the trail itself is actually made, the parent does damage, which pushes it out of where the mesh will be created at, which means the end overlap function never gets triggered, to which the enemy is then stuck in an endless loop of taking damage and getting knocked back until they die, and then it triggers a null pointer event over and over again because they're now dead. So we want to make sure we don't do any of that. So first we check to see if the array is empty. If the character array is empty, just clear it. We don't need this anymore. Otherwise, we do a for each loop. Excuse me. In the for loop, we want to do damage type. So we want to do another for each loop for the damage type. That way they take every damage type that they need to. We'll get the array element to get the mesh, to get the world location for the ACM collision manager to perform an area damage single, which is what we set up right here. Area damage trace info, it's area damage. Technically, we can still have it at point damage and it should still work. I'll leave it there and we'll test it, and if it doesn't, then we'll know why. Don't need anything for the damage base because the gameplay ability system covers that with damage types. And damage type class isn't needed because we override right here. Now, I have this hard coded at 20, which is 20 centimeters. In most cases, there's no way that enemies that are right next to each other should get this effect. But if you want to be extra careful, you can always do 10. This way, this is what makes it to where if you are in the spline, you are taking damage every time this function happens, instead of every single time you're in a segment, the damage happens. Because you don't want to be in two or more. Well, you might want your enemies to, but I promise you, you don't want them, the AI, to use it. You get stuck in 4 segments and die really fast. So we are still leveraging the ACM collision manager to perform damage a very efficient way. The next thing we want to do is on complete. We're first going to see if this array element is still valid. If it is, actually, this should probably be on this complete. Yes, it should. I'm going to put that right there. That does need to be there. On this complete, so we're still in the loop, we're going to check to see if they are still valid. I'm glad I did that because I was only testing it with one NPC. So are they still valid? Yes. The reason we want to check that is if they wind up dying when we're doing this check, then we're going to get a null pointer issue. If it's valid, we want to pull out of the array element of this first for each loop for the character, get overlapping components, to which we are going to do a for each loop with break. We're going to check, we're going to cast to the spline mesh component. If the cast fails, we're going ahead and automatically just setting it to false. You can leave it empty, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Now we're going to get the spline mesh segments array contains and plug that into the contains for a branch. If it's false, obviously the local overlap spline that we have down here, because you can create local variables, like I said earlier, will be false. If it's there, then we want it to be marked true. If it's also true, we want to just end this whole array, this whole loop. We don't need to do any more with this loop. Then we're going to come in here into the completed of this loop here and check if this is false. If it's false, we want to remove this actor from the array so it doesn't endlessly take damage in those edge case scenarios. For those of you who don't remember how to do this, right click. Right now it says convert to pure get. This will say convert to branch. So you can just do that. And that is everything for that function. Now, we have 2 more we need to get done for this video. I know the video is getting a bit long, but we're going to go ahead and get this done. They're fairly short. So create a new function called add from parent. And make sure that it has an input of ACF character. We'll drag, we'll get the ACF character array, contains, branch. If it doesn't contain it, then we want to add unique. Once we've added the unique, we want to go ahead and pulse damage timer handles. We want to start this up. And now on to the last one. Chance to apply status. We want the input pen to be, it's just an actor. And we'll get the component to get the ACF status effect component. We'll get our, we'll branch get our bool for the chance to apply status effect that we made at the beginning of the video. If it's true, then we'll get our status effects for each loop. The map value for random bool with weight. Chance to apply effect comes out of here. We'll get the instigator for the instigator. Let's go back into the events here, and we will right click on the ACM collision, add event to get the on actor damaged. Now we're also going to try to apply a status effect. And that is everything. So let's go ahead and quickly make sure that the changes that I made didn't break anything. All right, damage is still happening. They came out. We're good to go. Awesome. Perfect. Everything indeed still works. I'm going to pause real quick. All right. Wanted to make sure we did indeed get all of the functions, and we did. So that is the whole for this trail. As an FYI, for those who haven't considered it, this can be its own spell if you see fit, or you can add this to another spell if you want to. It's really up to you, because you can make it to where with the spell we made in the last episode, that when the enemy takes damage, then this actor is created. You'll need to add the functionality, but you can make it to where it effectively chases the actor that got hit, so that it leaves a trail behind. So just things to think about. I may wind up making that type of functionality in the future. If enough people bother me about it, I definitely will. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode when we get to the actor that summons and controls this guy.